Well, a very good morning, Porrick here. Thank you for all your questions in with Pat. Some of the plants we actually featured included the lovely sunflowers. So I was chatting to Pat about the sunflowers. These were sown from seed back in January. You can see already they're coming into bloom, and they're a fantastic plant. For kids to grow, great little project for them to grow, but also a great way to encourage bees and butterflies into your garden, because they'll come along, they'll pollinate the flowers, and then in the autumn the birds will feed off the sunflower seed. So you're encouraging lots of wildlife into the garden. So they're lovely at the moment. They're available in garden centre as plants, but you can also get them as seed and sow them over the Easter period. Here's one with the flower, the centre flower just going off. So it's just going over. So that can actually be cut out, and it encourages lots of more buds right around the base with. So there's one that's going to flower the whole summer. This is also an unusual plant. We're getting a great reaction to this plant for the team here in Newstalk. This is a plant called the curry plant. So some people dislike it. Some people absolutely love it. It's got silver leaves, yellow flowers. It smells of curry. And really simple plant to grow. You can grow it in pots and containers. You plant it out of doors. It's totally frost hardy, and it's just something different and unusual, and does very well in exposed gardens, and particularly seaside gardens. It's really, really good. So we've got some questions. So here we go.
So the first one comes in, just wondering if the gardener can advise on trees suitable for small gardens.
Okay. So there's quite a range of trees suitable for smaller gardens. So trees that are coming into flower at the moment are things like the lilacs are absolutely beautiful. They grow to about 7 or 8 feet. They flower every year during April and May, and they come in a whole range of different colours, and it's very, very simple to grow. You've also got plants like snowy mespelis, which is a white flowering tree. Again, it's in flower at the moment. It's got coppery foliage, white flowers, beautiful autumn colour, really nice small tree again. It's one that'll grow maybe slightly taller, 8, 9, maybe 10 feet, but you can always keep it smaller by cutting it back. Weeping willows are quite small as well, up to about 6 feet. Japanese maples, I have about 12 of them in my own garden. They only grow 3 feet in height or 4 feet in height, depending on the variety, and again, are ideal for small gardens. So Japanese maples, beautiful leaf colour. The snowy mespelis, which is white flowers and lovely foliage colour. What else did I mention? The lilacs, of course, in a whole range of different colours. Maybe some crabapple as well, if you want a slightly taller tree, up to about 10 feet, 10 to 12 feet, which again is quite small in height. And they produce white flowers or pink flowers this time of year, and beautiful red edible berries in the autumn. So a really good time for planting trees in the garden.
Okay, so is it too late to set box hedge on shallow ground?
Okay, so boxwood hedging, that's a lovely evergreen hedge. It's got small little leaves, very slow growing. So it's ideal for a hedge, say up to a foot, maybe 2 feet in height. And this is the time of year to trim it, but it's a perfect time for planting it. And if you go into your local garden centre, they'll have small baby plants that you can start the hedge off as really young plants, or stronger plants that have been grown on for several years. But now is the time to plant them. Make sure the ground is weed free before you put them into the soil. So maybe treat it with a little bit of weed free 360. That'll just eliminate any broadleaf weeds that might be there, and you're good to plant, and this weekend would be an ideal time to do that.
With some coming in from social. So this one is from Pierce. So I planted bear's breeches 3 years ago. That has grown into a healthy leafy plant, 70 centimetres tall and 1 metre wide. It is, however, it has never flowered. However, how can I encourage it to flower?
Okay. Well, bear's breeches often does that. It tends to, many plants do that when you plant them initially. They tend to do a lot of growing at the expense of flowering. So to help it to come into flower and to encourage it into flower, use a high potash feed at this time of year. So something like sulphate of potash would be ideal, or a rose fertiliser. They're all high in potassium, and that helps to slow down the growth and induce flowering into the plant. So it's not a case that it won't flower. It's just, it's really enjoying the space that it's got at the moment. It's putting on really big leaves, which it tends to do. And it should come into flower this year, but certainly feeding it with a high potash feed, rose feed, would be perfect. Apply it now, apply it in a month's time, and it should come into bloom this year for you.
Okay, so this comes in from Aileen. So how do I get rid of ivy, which is encroaching from my neighbouring field and smothering my beech hedge?
Okay. So a very good question, and ivy, as it spreads, it's evergreen, of course, and it'll attach itself to the beech head. So now is a really good time to get rid of it before the beech comes into full leaf. I would use the Roundup gel. So it's like hair gel, it's sticky, and you can simply paint it onto the leaves of the ivy. It'll kill it within 6 or 7 days. So get a dry day, get some Roundup gel. You get it in your local garden centre. You simply paint it onto the ivy as it's coming in, and that will kill it without affecting your beech hedge, and it should die within 6 or 7 days.
Okay, so this comes in from Breed. So our crabapple tree is overrun with large black flying insects, about twice the size of flies. They hover around and are rather ugly. Have you got any idea what they are?
Well, they're just black flies that are in the garden. They're actually attracted to the flowering crab for the nectar, similar to bees coming into the garden. So really, there's no need to do anything with them. If anything, they're probably pollinating the flowers for you. So leave them well enough alone. They're not going to do any damage to the flowers. They're really just going after the nectar and pollen, and by doing that they're actually pollinating your trees as well. So my advice is to leave them alone. They're not harming the tree in any way. There's no need to spray because the bees are going to be visiting those flowers as well. So really just leave the flowering malice alone. They'll produce the berry. The black flies will help to pollinate the flowers for you, so they're of no harm whatsoever. So my advice is really leave them alone and enjoy the berries in the autumn.
Okay, so this comes in from Brendan. So we've this fantastic tree in the back garden of our house that was here when we moved in. It's green all year round, then during April, May has the most spectacular fluorescent purple-blue flowers. It's a bee fest for those 2 months. The purple flowers are small and fall off the tree and cover the garden. I'm just wondering, would you have any idea of what type of tree this could be?
He hasn't sent a picture. Well, the best thing would be to send a picture into me. If you could do that, maybe send it in by email into Pat Kenny at Newstalk.
He drops it in the comments.
Or drop it in the comment on the Facebook page, and we'll have a look at it just to identify it. So maybe the best thing is just send in a picture. I'll identify it and tell you what it is. Sounds interesting, though.
Yeah. Okay, so this comes in from Derek. So what's the best weed killer for brambles? Just cleared out an old shed and want to try and control the brambles before putting the new one in.
Okay, well, the best thing for brambles is Weed Free 360. So it's a liquid weed killer. You simply mix it up in water, apply it onto the brambles, and that'll kill them within 7 or 8 days. It's also beneficial in that it doesn't contaminate the soil, so it's not going to poison your soil as such. So you just mix in a watering can or a sprayer, apply it onto the leaf of the brambles, and that'll get rid of them. My advice is to put a small bit of washing up liquid into the mix, because that tends to stick it onto the leaf of the weed and you get a better kill. And remember to apply the weed killer in dry weather. Read the instructions properly, follow the instructions. So the treatment to use is weed free, and that'll kill them within 6 or 7 days, and it can be used on a whole spectrum of other weeds in the garden.
Okay, so Maggie wants to know, last week you showed a lovely shrub. It had yellow flowers and flowered all summer. Can you remember the name of it?
The plant I had 2 weeks ago was a plant called Euryops. It had daisy-like flowers, small daisy-like flowers, kind of greenish, dark green or silvery foliage. And again, Euryops is in flower at the moment and will flower right through till October. So it's a brilliant plant in a pot or container. Very, very easy to grow. It does require bright sunlight, so keep it in a sunny location, south or east or west facing location. Brilliant in a pot, and it doesn't grow too big, about maybe 2 feet by about 2 feet in diameter. So it's a plant called Euryops. There's no common name for it, Euryops, and you get it in your local garden centre this time of year. Brilliant bright yellow flowers, very similar to the sunflower, the colour of the sunflower, but the flowers are a lot smaller and a lot more numerous.
Okay, Brendan, I'm just seeing your comment there. So if you just email digital@newstalk.com, if you just ping the photo onto us there, I'll get it over to Pork just about the tree. Yeah. So the next one is from Geraldine. So I want to avoid using Roundup, but still need to keep some areas clear. Recipe with vinegar, soap and Epsom salts is recommended, but it's hardly regular vinegar, is it?
Yes, it is. It's actually ordinary vinegar that you use. Now, I've seen that on trending on social media at the moment. So it's a mixture of vinegar, which is basically an acid, Epsom salts, and you mix the two together and apply it onto the foliage of the weeds. The only thing with it is it will burn it back because it's an acid. It'll actually burn the foliage of the weeds back. But if you've got things like dandelions or docks or any deep-rooted perennial weeds, it's not going to kill the root. So you will find that it will work for several days, but within a fortnight, the weed will be back up again with fresh foliage. So depending on what the weeds are, the vinegar will work if the weeds are quite light and small annual weeds. It'll certainly kill them back. But if it's perennial weeds like the dandelions or the docks, then the vinegar is only a short-term solution. So really my advice is, depending on what the weed is, maybe asking your local garden centre for a proprietary weed killer. But the vinegar, it's just traditional, ordinary, not balsamic vinegar, that's too dear. Just get common, ordinary garden or home vinegar and mix it with the Epsom salts and spray it on. But remember, it's short term.
So this is the tree.
Oh yeah, sorry, that's ceanothus. So that's the California lilac. A beautiful tree, very easy to grow. As you say, it retains its leaf. It's in flower at the moment, and the bees absolutely love it. And again, if you want to encourage bees into your garden, plant ceanothus in your garden. It grows as a shrub or as a small tree, but that's a beautiful example of it, and it's absolutely covered in flower, and the bees absolutely love it. You can also get a ceanothus for ground cover. So if you have a bank or slope, you can plant it, a variety called Ceanothus repens, that spreads across the ground and stays quite low. So that's what the plant is. It's Ceanothus, easy to grow and very colourful.
Okay, so this is the final question. It's from Judith. So would you have any advice on an azalea that's not looking very healthy and not really flowering?
What is it?
Azalea? Azalea, yeah.
Azalea. Well, it's unusual that they're not flowering well because they're absolutely covered in bloom this year. It's been a great year for azaleas and rhododendrons and many of the spring flowering plants. So I'm surprised it's not doing well for you. Remember, azaleas need acid soil. So they need an ericaceous compost when you're planting them into the soil, or if you put them in pots or containers, they need that acidy soil. You can also get a special feed for them called an ericaceous feed. You'll get that in your local garden centre in a pellet or a liquid form, and you can certainly apply that to it. What you'll probably find this year is it's not going to flower. If it's not flowering already, it's not going to flower well for you this year, but you could encourage it by feeding it with the ericaceous feed, building it up for next year, and hopefully next spring you'll get lots of colour. But they are doing really well in most gardens at the moment. They're absolutely spectacular. So that's it from me. We'll see you back in 2 weeks' time. I'll be back on Wednesday, 2 weeks, for more of your gardening questions. Bye.